And welcome to our session today on filling out state or eXp buyer broker representation agreements. I want to do a quick sound check, so if you can hear me okay, if you can put a thumbs up in the chat box, or there's a little emoji button on the bottom there. You can throw something in the chat so we know that you can hear me, because sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes it does, it's what it is. Anybody? Cool. All right. Dave, cool. All right, cool, good. All right, cool. So welcome. I'm Steve Reddick, your designated managing broker for the great state of Illinois, and I want to appreciate you being here to go through this session. I know if you've already heard this before, awesome. We did go over this in the past, though there have been some updates and changes just in the past week. There's so many things coming at us very quickly, and so we'll continue to keep detailing, repeating this class over the course of the next, however long we need to, several weeks or months. All right, best practices today for navigating this session is to click on the center screen, and you're going to get that option to zoom in. And please mute yourself. You're going to use that chat button there at the middle if you like to put in questions or comments. And but the mute button is there at the bottom. If you could mute yourself to avoid any background noise, babies barking, dogs crying, whole 9 yards. We'll continue to teach in detail and repeat this class today. It's Friday, it's noon. Welcome to our virtual lunch and learn in the virtual eXp world, and continue to look for dates as we go through. So what's going on? What are consumers seeing? This is what your clients seeing. Commissions are slashed, and save buyers are thousands, and cutting commissions, and home prices are driving down the housing market, and the economy is going to Look, this is not reality. Super important that you go beyond the headlines, right? You need to be armed with facts to talk to your clients, help them understand it, but also try and stay away from all those internet chat boxes, because they're just going to get you down the path. All right. Obviously you should now be aware that the NAR settlement and the requirement that all realtors use a buyer-broker agreement prior to showing a property starts August 17th. That's a few short, less than 3 weeks away. So it's just something you have to do, right? As a realtor and a company that's associated with the National Association of Realtors, we have to follow these policies starting August 17th. And on top of that, now the state of Illinois has passed Bill SB 3740, which says effective January 1st, 2025, every licensed broker in the state of Illinois must have a written employment agreement with their clients. Again, that's starting January 1st of 2025. So whether you're a realtor or not, it also covers everyone, right? It's going to ultimately... clarification I've gotten from the Illinois Association of Realtors is that this covers tenants as well. Commercial agents are going to have to start having buyer representation agreements. You're going to have buyer representation agreements with tenants, and of course buyers buying homes, land, any license activity. So that's that. So what does that mean? That means you get a buyer agreement, and you get a buyer agreement. Everybody gets a buyer agreement. Woohoo! Why are we doing this? Look, the settlement as a whole destroys procuring costs. Agents only get paid if they have a signed buyer agreement. Super important to remember. No offer of compensations in the MLS anymore. It doesn't matter who show the house. Agent A can show the house with no agreement. Agent B gets an agreement and shows the house the same day. Guess who gets paid? Agent B gets paid. Ultimately matters who earned the trust of the client to guide them through the process with a signed contract for compensation. Today, what we're talking about, we're going to talk about how to correctly complete and submit eXp single property buyer broker agreement, what it's for. Secondly, we have an expanded 2-page eXp buyer broker more representation agreement for a longer term. And then we're also going to talk about the Illinois Association of Realtors' new exclusive buyer agency agreement. Good stuff, right? Again, the session today is primarily talking about how to complete them, how to protect yourself, how to fill these out. Definitely encourage you to get more scripting on the things that you need to say. I'm going to share some items here as well. I'm hoping the session keeps it brief, 30, 40 minutes. And Yeah, we're going to answer a lot of questions, so it would be fantastic if you can hold the questions till the end. I will share some of these forms in the chat box as we go through, just so you have them. We'll throw one in right now so that you know that we're going to be doing this. One resource I do want to share with you, though, to make sure that you are using this and taking advantage of it is the eXp Toolkit. The eXp Toolkit, um, this is a website and information that eXp put together back in, pretty much a couple of weeks after the settlement, was detailed. We've always talked about buyer representation, how important it is. And I've shared a link in the chat box to this buyer representation toolkit. Lots of great FAQs, lots of great talking points and scripting. That's at exptoolkit.com/buyer representation. There's also scripting and best practice on what to say to sellers and listing appointments. And it's a really, really great, fantastic resource that you should be taking advantage of and looking into. But again, primarily talking about how to complete some of these forms today. We're going to be going into a lot of in-depth and a lot of the questions I have up here on the screen. Number one, hey, when do I have to sign these? These have to be signed prior to you opening the door to a property. Hey, when I fill them out, can I put up to 3%? No. The commission in the buyer representation agreements must be a set amount. If my buyer agreement expires, do I have to have a new one signed? Yes, you do. If you're working with the buyer, if you want to get compensated, it must be valid and active during those time periods you're working with them in order for you to get paid. Can I amend my commission on a buyer representation agreement? That's kind of a gray area, but the answer is probably not. I guess, in and of itself, when you're showing a property, that buyer agreement stays in place. If you want to amend that buyer agreement, you'd rather do that on the next property that you're showing. Or we're going to talk about how to be specific in your buyer representation agreements today to protect yourself in situations where there's bonuses and things like that. Can I have a retainer fee made out to me? Yeah, can you slip me some cash? No. Retainer fees are made out to the brokerage. What if a builder or seller offers more than my buyer agreed to? Well, that amount goes to the buyer unless it's specified in your agreement. Again, we're going to talk about that today at length. If you have questions, please write them down. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. We're going to go through a lot of these answers and questions for you today. All right, so we're going to, again, primarily what we're talking about today is filling out some of these forms and how they look and what they look like. So let's talk, number one, about the eXp single property buyer broker agreement. I did share this one in the chat box. I'm happy to do it again if we need it. Single property buyer broker representation agreement. Throw it in there if you want to follow along. This is a one-page form, right? It's quick, it's simple, it's easy for a consumer to understand. And what is this used for? Number one, it's really designed to assist you with a single showing, start a conversation with a potential buyer client, and really allows trust to be established between the buyer and the buyer's agent. This one-page form is easy to understand, it's easy to follow, and it really opens that conversation to you with that buyer to possibly extend it to a longer-term buyer-broker agreement, right? And so let's get into this form right now and break it down. Let's break it down. Let's look at it. Take a look. How's this all filled out? All right, at the top there, sections 1, 2, and 3. Again, this is a single property buyer agreement. Again, this is just for a one-time show. And so this is specific to one property. And you put the property address in there, right there, number 1. 333 Elm Street, any town, wherever you're at. Maybe you're seeing 2 properties with a new client that day and you want to put 2 addresses in there. Okay. I mean, this is meant to be used for a specific property. Often maybe it's an internet lead. These people only want to be committed to you for that property that you're showing them. That's cool. Number 2 is the length of the agreement. Again, if this is a single property representation agreement, generally the term of this agreement is probably going to be pretty short. It's probably going to be pretty short. right? You want to protect yourself during that time period. Maybe it's for the day of that you showed that property, or maybe it's just for the weekend. Maybe it's for a week. Good stuff. And number 3 references agency disclosure. Again, this is an eXp form. It's a national eXp form. You're going to need to supplement this with the Illinois Consumer Guide to Agency, and we'll talk about that in just a sec. All right, going on to section 4, we're talking about broker fees and commissions and who gets paid what and how and when and where and why. First off, just want to draw your attention to the language in the broker fee. While you are getting a commitment from a buyer to pay you a commission, right there in that section. Again, that sample there, again, all commissions are sample examples only. Agents are independent contractors. Set your own rates. That's my legal disclaimer at the bottom. But ultimately, you're going to try and have that buyer fee paid by the seller of the property by including the broker fee as part of any offer. In this section as well, you're going to want to put in your broker protection period, right? And here, that's the example I have in at 180 days. And let me pull up my laser pointer, because no expense bared on graphics at eXp. And then here you're going to want to put in a commission amount. You need an amount or a percentage. You can't have 0 in there. If it has 0 in there, unless you're really working for free. Can't be up to 3%. It can't be a range between 2 and 3%. It can't be whatever the seller offers me. It has to be a quantifiable number. And if you want to be more specific or you have additional agreements with that buyer, you're going to put that in item number 6 there in that additional terms section. Like, Steve, what additional terms? What are you referring to? What could go in there? Glad you asked. In specific situations, maybe you're working with a seller or a builder that's offering a bonus. If your client is looking at new construction homes, and maybe that builder's offering a bonus, then you need to write that specifically in to that agreement. But again, it must be specific. Any builder bonus, $10,000 or less, is paid to the buyer's agent. Or maybe you are specific that, on resale homes, your commission is 2.5%, but with builders, it's 5%. I don't know. Don't know what builders are paying these days. Next, properties to not show. Specific direction from a consumer or client. Jamie, come on, you're stealing my thunder. Let me get to that. I will get to that. Possibly properties to not show. Like, you can put that in there if you want additional terms to say buyer instructs buyer's agent not to show property that do not offer buyer, agent concessions, or buyer concessions towards buyer, something to that effect. Also, you put language in here as it regards to retainer fees. We'll talk about that more in a bit. And they are allowed in the state of Illinois, so you can put retainer fee language in the additional section, or a provision to reduce, Jamie. If you need an agreement to reduce your fee, if seller will not compensate to the level you have negotiated, so you can write that in there. Your agreement say 3%, but in the additional terms it says, could say buyer's agent will reduce to 2% if that's the maximum the seller will pay. So yeah, you can absolutely definitely take less, but you can never take more. Right? All right. Retainer fees explained. What are those retainer fees? You mean I can get paid up front for the work I'm doing? Yeah, isn't that awesome? It is. Why not? Charge your clients up front. Retainer fees. Retainer fees are paid up front when they sign the buyer representation agreement and agree to the fee. Paid up front. The buyer will, you sign the representation agreement, buyer then hand you a check made out to eXp Realty LLC for the fee right then and there. You're being paid up front for the work you've done. That's okay. Retainer fee is basically like a consulting fee. Once you get the check and you create a SkySlope file, we're going to pay you on it right up front, right away, same day. Then you mail it to the P.O. box for commissions in the area. Now, retainer fee can be credited towards the commission or not. Again, depends on your mutual agreement between you and your buyer. But you're still maxed out at what's on your agreement. So let's say your retainer fee is $2,500 and the commission is $10,000. You can credit the buyer towards the commission, and then your commission at closing is only $7,500 because you already took the $2,500 retainer fee. Or if you're not crediting that retainer fee towards the commission, then you're getting the $2,500 up front and the $10,000 at closing. But again, making sure that it's spelled out in the buyer representation agreement, and that you're not getting more than what's on your agreement. Retainer fees are not paid at closing. Do not have the buyer bring a check to closing for the retainer fee. Okay, please don't. Can really make things challenging as it relates to maximum credit, lender fees. You know, it gets very confusing for a title company, and why your buyer showed up with the check, made out to eXp. It doesn't work. Okay, retainer fees are paid up front the day they sign their agreement. Do not have a buyer bring a check to closing for a retainer fee. All right, going further on this form, again, it's a one-page form. This is the bottom of it. This is where your buyer signs. This is where your broker signs. But please make sure that your contact information is in there. You know, especially if an internet lead, someone doesn't know how to get a hold of you, maybe you only see them one time in passing. It's important that your information is in there because maybe that buyer wants to get a hold of you to put an offer on the property, right? So, you know, just kind of go there. All right. Does this need managing broker's signature? I've had this question a lot because it doesn't say managing broker on there. And again, this is just more of a general form for eXp nationally, but every state's different. But in the state of Illinois, according to Title 68, Section 145-0770, blah, 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 blah. Yes, brokerage agreements in the state of Illinois need the signature of the sponsoring broker. So you will have to submit these to your broker through the regular channels to get it signed. So appreciate your patience on that. As always, we knock that stuff out and get it back to you super fast. All right, keys for success must be signed with their state agency form. What does that mean for us? The state agency form is the consumer guide to real estate agency in Illinois on the buyer side. Just send it over to them. I would imagine many of you will be using this through DigiSign or .loop or DocuSign or whatever service you're using, but this will need to kind of go hand in hand with the consumer guide to agency in Illinois. And then just to reiterate, it must have a time limit for length of work. It must establish a specific fee for the property you're showing if they should purchase it. Next, consider sending to buyer in advance of showing. Maybe meet them somewhere other than the property for a quick review and debrief. Maybe you want to create an explanation video of how they're signing this and why. Maybe you're going to need to keep a bunch of copies of this in the trunk of your car, and they need to sign it as you're right before you unlock the door. It's really up to you. But again, these need to be signed prior to them accessing the property. Jamie, great question. So in the instance where you're submitting that form for managing broker signature, you know, it's okay to still have them sign it, show the property, and your managing broker can sign it later. You're going to just submit it through the normal channels. Just put a blank there, a signature field at the bottom next to broker name, anywhere at the bottom there, just through your digital signing service. So yeah, no, not a huge issue. Just somewhere there on the bottom, throw it in and send it over. Timing wise, not necessarily a huge of an issue because these are non-exclusive agreements. Again, reminder, saying there, the eXp single property buyer agreement is not an exclusive agreement. Its primary use is for a one-time show. Maybe it's an internet lead. Maybe it's a buyer wanting to see your listing, and you are going to end up representing them. You know, if it's your listing, you need to sign a representation agreement with a buyer. So again, this is just really meant for maybe a one-time show, maybe one or two properties as you're getting to know that client. All right, if the buyer wants to see another house, what do you need to do? Well, hey, I want to go see another house tomorrow. You're going to need to do another agreement with them for more properties. Extend that opportunity to help them find the right home. A question we've had as a whole. Hey, if a listing agent asks to see my buyer agreement, do I have to provide that? And the answer is no, absolutely not. If you're a listing agent, please do not ask to see buyer's agents' buyer agreements. That's a no-no. It's just like a buyer's agent asking a listing agent for a copy of their listing agreement. Okay, those are employment contracts between a client and a brokerage. Should not be shared with other agents. All right, buyer doesn't have the cash to pay my fee. Do I still show? Well, it's your call. In the contract, it references where you're going to ask the seller to credit at close of escrow or pay that commission. But again, if that listing agent or seller say they're adamantly not going to pay buyer agent compensation, then you really need to consult with your buyer and make sure that you explain that to them. But in my mind, it's just about the net price. Just submit the offer anyway. Make that seller look at it. Make that listing agent look at it. Because again, it's all about net price. I think that's part for listing agents too, to start educating sellers on. It's just all about net price, not whether you can pay somebody something or not. You got a $550,000 offer where that buyer is asking for a 2.5% concession to pay their agent. And then you're getting another offer for that same seller at $475,000 that's not paying a buyer agent commission. Well, is your seller truly not going to accept the one because I'm not going to pay a buyer agent? Come on. It's all about net price. And that's what we need to start really educating our sellers about. All said and done, it's just about the net price, whether a concession is being paid to the buyer to pay their agent or not. Other frequently asked questions. If it's my listing, do I still need this document? Look, you're only going to need the document if you're going to offer representation to the buyer in addition to the seller. So if a buyer calls up, say, hey, I'd like to see your listing. Oh, do you have an agent? No, I'm unrepresented. It's your choice. And again, with approval of your seller, whether you can work with that buyer, whether you're doing dual agency or not, or if you're going to not represent them, then you can provide that buyer with a notice of no agency and just move forward along as long as your seller is okay with it. Hey, I prefer to use my state buyer form. Do I need to use this? No. We're looking to create a new standard of easy to read forms. Lots of articles have been out there in the news, and a couple of organizations who have independent organizations out there that have stated that our buyer agreement forms are much easier to use, easier for the consumer to understand. And so again, it's your choice. All right, where do I find these single property buyer broker forms? Great question. They are in SkySlope in the Forms tab, the new Forms tab. It's not too new. We've been looking at this for several months now, where we have taken all those forms and templated them and put them into SkySlope forms. And I'm sharing a link in the chat box right now to a quick YouTube video. It's 2 minutes long about how to find those, how to find your templated eXp forms in there. Several of our large associations in Illinois have put their forms in there, as has the Illinois Association of Realtors. So no more digging around on some workplace page or some old clunky FAQ. All of our forms are templated in SkySlope, and you can find them this way. So I shared that link in the chat for that quick 2-minute video for you to come back to later. Anything you're looking for, our E&O insurance, our W-9, the ABA, the wire fraud, they're all pre-templated in SkySlope forms now. So quick and easier for you guys to use. All right, next up, we're talking about the next form, which is the eXp Buyer Broker Representation Agreement. And I'll drop a copy of that into the chat box as well. And so the Buyer Broker Representation Agreement is an eXp form. Again, this is meant for a longer time period. This is a 2-page document, right? And it's meant for a longer time period. It's meant to cover a specific geographic area. So, but again, it's non-exclusive. So let's break this one down. Breaking it down. Break it down. What, where, when, and who. Identifying the property and type of location. Like currently, it only says residential. Commercial is going to be coming online in Illinois on January 1st, and so you'll have to use these with commercial clients too. Kind of is what it is. But let's get deep into talking about how to fill this form out. Again, this is a 2-page form, and it's really meant to be a form that, again, for somebody that wants to start working with you for a longer period of time, where the single property representation agreement probably doesn't apply anymore, but they don't want to be working with you exclusively. Okay. All right. So number one, properties and what type of properties you're viewing with that buyer. We'll assume probably residential, and then geographic area. Look, I would advise in geographic area section that you put something in be specific, right? Please don't put entire state of Illinois. If you're an agent in Champaign, Illinois, and all of a sudden that buyer wants to buy something in Rockford, are you really qualified to work with them? I don't know, but if it really came down to us trying to enforce it in a court of law, is a judge going to say you're trying to sell them a house 4 hours away? I don't know. But again, putting in a specific geographic area makes you look like a professional. Is it specific counties? Is it specific cities? Length of agreements. Also, again, as I mentioned, this could be for a longer period of time, because now you're starting to work with the buyer and want to be semi-exclusive. It's non-exclusive, the non-exclusive agreement. Maybe it's for a longer time period, maybe 60, 90, 120 days, maybe a year, right? Whatever you've agreed to. Number 3, agency disclosure. Again, this is an eXp form not specific to Illinois, so you do need to supplement with the Consumer Guide to Real Estate Agency. And also in SkySlab forms, because the Illinois Association of Realtors forms are in there. Moving on to Section 5. Section 5, for best experience, buyers encouraged to be accompanied by broker on buyer's first visit to any properties. And it also states the buyer understands that signing more than one buyer representation agreement for any overlapping period of time could expose buyer to liability for paying additional fees. It also confirms in Section 5 that buyer is not a party to any active exclusive buyer-broker representation agreements. Again, this agreement is non-exclusive, and as we all know, if a buyer is in an exclusive agreement with another agent, that you can't work with them. You can't work with them. Question in the chat. So if somebody wanted to refer somebody to in a totally different area for someplace, does this cover them? It does not, right? Ultimately, you can refer them to an agent in another part of the state, right? But ultimately, that buyer has to sign a buyer representation agreement with that agent in order for that agent to represent them, for that agent to get paid, for you to in turn get paid to a referral fee. So it's all about protection. Does your agreement extend to another agent? No, not really. Sort of, kind of. We do practice designated agency in the state of Illinois. Can we transfer it to another agent? Yeah, but again, these are non-exclusive agreements. This one at any given time, the buyer could cancel. So again, best experience in number 5, you're just trying to ask that buyer to be transparent. Number 1, are they in an exclusive agreement? If they are, you can't work with them. Number 2, do they have non-exclusive agreements with other agents? And if so, please let us know. Please disclose how many non-exclusive agreements you are in. So, Steve, what? A buyer could have signed multiple non-exclusive agreements with other agents? Yes, they can. A buyer can have more than one non-exclusive buyer-broker agreement. The answer is yes, but it should be spelled out in the agreement as to what areas each agent is to cover, right? Maybe you're working with them in one area, but they're working with another agent in another area. Or maybe it's for a different time period or different type of property. Maybe they want to work with one agent who's looking for land for them, and they're working with you to find a condo. All right, Section 6 talks about commissions again. Disclaimer, throwing it in there, all commissioner examples only. Agents are independent contractors, set your own rates. Number one, there's your broker protection period. Again, similar to everyone should be very familiar with that. Broker protection periods could be 60, 90, 180 days. I've seen some representation agreements with buyers have a broker protection period of 365 days. Hey, why not? You're an independent contractor. Protect yourself. And again, same concept here. You must have a commission in here. This cannot be zero. If it shows zero, you're truly working for free. You don't want that. Moving on to page 2. On page 2, in this gray shaded area at the top, it really explains specifically to the buyer how you as an agent and how the brokerage gets paid. Right? Primarily, it could be a credit to the buyer at closing from the seller so that the buyer can compensate your brokerage. Could be direct seller to broker compensation, right? The seller can pay us either way, but again, we're getting away from that broker to broker commission. So we don't want to be responsible to have to pay an agent from another brokerage. That all kind of goes away. That's a lot of this talk you see about on the internet about eXp getting away from broker to broker commission. Hey, we're fine with a seller paying a buyer's agent's brokerage, right? We're fine with the buyer paying the buyer's agent brokerage. We're trying to get away from saying we're paying broker to broker or that we share commissions, right? Again, this just kind of details it for them. And then we have this additional terms section again, and here are some examples similar to what we talked about before. Hey, maybe a builder bonus of $5,000 or less is paid to the broker, or maybe you're going to put retainer language in there, buyer to pay a retainer fee of $2,500 at signing of this agreement via check made out to eXp Realty. And this is credited or maybe it's not credited. And again, on the bottom there of page 2, make sure that your contact information is in there. Maybe that buyer needs to get a hold of you and they don't know where your number's at. You know how people are. You just never know. You never know. Just want to make sure that's accurate. And again, yes, this does need to be signed by your managing broker because, agreements in Illinois need to be signed. So, just somewhere down there on the bottom, broker, in here, managing broker signature, just click it in through DigiSign.loop, whatever system you're using, and get it over to us, and we will get it signed for you. It doesn't need to be signed before you show the property, just at some point, as you're going through the whole process, get it signed and get them a copy. All right. The eXp agreements state that the buyer will request to have their fee paid by the seller. How is that accomplished? Well, there are various ways. Number one, you should, at the direction of your buyer, be asking for that in the offer, right? Maybe right next to the purchase price in the contract, or maybe on an additional line, depending on what your contract looks like. Again, we have 21 different boards in the state of Illinois with several different purchase agreements. But again, this language around it would say something to the effect of seller to credit buyer, exit close of escrow to satisfy buyer's contractual agreement with buyer's broker. Write it on the contract. What's another way that you can immortalize the amount that you're being paid? Hey, eXp's created a form, as have other associations and boards. But obviously we do prefer ours and like ours because it is more clear to the consumer and what it is all about. So we do have this form called the Direct Compensation from Seller form. And I am happy to drop a copy of that up in the chat box. Give me just a sec here. There we go. And again, this immortalizes the commissions. And again, our conversation around the fact that through transactions as part of the settlement, that the seller is the one that's compensating the buyer's agent, right? Or buyer's agent's brokerage. And yes, question to check, can this be attached to the offer? Yes, that's the intent. You can send this over with the offer. You can put it on the contract. You can attach this to the offer. You can do both. You can do one or the other or both. It's important for you to protect yourself to make sure that if the listing agent says, yeah, the seller's paying, X percent, that you get that in writing to protect yourself because it's not going to be in the MLS anymore. Okay, that offer of compensation in the MLS goes away. And that guarantee, quote unquote, that the brokerage is going to pay you or pay us goes away as well. So you need something in writing as it relates to your compensation. So this is the direct compensation from seller form. Again, this is a one-pager. You send this over to your offer. With your offer? Great question. Yeah. Hey, can I send a compensation addendum to the listing agent prior to showing the property? Yeah, why not? Call them up. Hey, is your seller offering buyer concessions? And the listing agent says, yes, my seller's offering X. Hey, great. Can we get that in writing before we show the property? Why not? Send it over before showing it. See if they'll sign it. They may not. Who knows? What's for this and confirmation compensation from seller form? It's the same thing. We just actually renamed this form because we were just trying to be more clear on what it was for. So yes, this is the same as the eXp confirmation compensation form. We're going through a process to renaming it. So great question. Essentially, a lot of our boards in the state of Illinois started to create their own compensation addendums as well. Check with your local association if they have one. Two of the big boards in Illinois have them, and new ones have come out over the port just past couple of days too from different associations all throughout the state. So check with your association if they have a compensation addendum. Again, our preference is that you use ours because we prefer the language on ours. But it's your choice, an independent contractor, what you want to do. Just protect yourself. All right, don't forget, on the eXp buyer broker representation agreement, it is not an exclusive agreement. And the buyer can cancel anytime with written notice because it's non-exclusive. And again, its primary use is just for creating a long-term agreement with a client maybe who's not comfortable signing an exclusive agreement. It's okay. Right? Every client's going to be different. Every client's going to be different. All right, let's roll through now. If you want an exclusive agreement, then we're going to talk about the Illinois Association of Realtors Exclusive Buyer Agency Agreement. And for those of you that have used this in the past, have seen it, it's also known as Form 338, but we do ask that you use the most recent version because guess what? They just changed it. They changed it about 10 days ago. So stop using the old one, right? It uses the language from before. We do want you to start using the new one. And recently this was just rolled out again. I think it was about 10 days ago. So if you're looking for the latest forms, we're working with SkySlope to make sure that they update those. I haven't checked today whether they are, but they should be updated in SkySlope forms shortly. If you need access to these new forms, they're on the Illinois Association of Realtors website. The Illinois Association also has provided a guidance for some of those revised forms that they've just rolled out. And I'm sharing this FAQ from the Illinois Association of Realtors in the chat box, but it's also available on the Illinois Realtors website. And so new for July 2024, they've revised Form 338, and we're going to go over how to fill that out line by line just here in about 30 seconds. They've also created an additional exclusive representation form, which is Form 337. Before, Form 338 had a box on it for whether it was exclusive right to acquire or exclusive representation. Now, Illinois Realtors has separated those into two different forms. So if your buyer client still wants to have the ability to go buy something on their own from a FSBO or from a builder, you can use a different form. They've also created Form 339 and 341, which are non-exclusive buyer representation agreements. But again, if you're using non-exclusive ones, we prefer you to use the eXp ones. But yeah, so let's get it deep into this. We're going to go over Form 338, which is the one that has dual agency consent in it. And just like I said, we're going through this line by line, how to fill it out. It's all fancy now. It's got some blue borders on it. Looks super techy and cool. But again, if you want an exclusive agreement with the buyer, then this is the one to use. All right. How are we filling this out? Right here on page 1 at the top, buyer agrees to work with eXp Realty, LLC as your brokerage. And then here in the second line, you're putting in the client's name. Section number 1, designated agent. Designated agent. We practice a designated agency in the state of Illinois. So your name as an agent goes here in this box. And so the difference between so question, what's the difference between exclusive right to acquire and exclusive representation? So the right to acquire says no matter what property they go out and buy, you are entitled to a commission. Exclusive representation says that you are their exclusive agent for properties that are in the MLS, but if they go buy a FSBO or they go buy from a builder on their own, that you're not entitled to a commission on those. All right, so you're the designated agent in section 1, and then we're moving on to the bottom of page 1, exclusive right to acquire. Again, this details the geographic area that you're helping that client in. Again, my recommendation is be specific, show that you're a professional, show that you're an expert in a specific area, not entire state of Illinois. I'm an expert in from the Missouri border on up to Wisconsin border. You name it, I do. No. Section 3, duration. Again, this is an exclusive agreement. How long is this for? Again, you're an independent contractor. You're going to determine this through conversations with your clients. Be 6 months. Can it be for a year? Sure. It's whatever you mutually agree upon. All right, rolling on to page 2, duties of you as an agent, buyer's designated agent will. Again, this more clearly breaks down your responsibilities as a buyer's agent and also the responsibility of the buyer to you as an agent. Section 4, you can fill in here other things where a designated agent will research. Maybe you're, besides the MLS, maybe you're helping them on for sub owners, or you're going to do some door knocking, or maybe you're going to talk to some of your past clients or eXp agents internally, eXp exclusives, I don't know. Section F, other services that you're going to provide. Maybe you're helping them with relocation. Maybe you're going to do some virtual showings. Again, the more specific you are on these contracts, the more like a professional you appear to be. And then information a brokerage company will provide. And then here's some legalese on the bottom of page 2 that you can read later. But again, you can see here it says buyer. It's laying out terms for the buyer. The buyer's responsibilities are towards you. So I like how they've written this. They've made it definitely clear. Unfortunately, it's 7 pages long now, whereas before it was 4, but okay. All right, let's go into section 5 for compensation. Compensation. They've made this much clearer now. They've changed the language from sponsoring brokerage to brokerage company, right? That was kind of confusing before, so I'm glad they've changed that language. And here you're going to put in a commission. Again, commissions are examples only. You're an independent contractor. You set your own rates. Buyer agrees to it. So it could be as a percentage. It could be a flat fee there in that first section. But again, you can only select one. You can't select this and that and add in. And so there's also a section here where you can create additional terms or be more specific and write them in similar to the examples on the eXp ones I mentioned. Maybe you want to put be more specific in that section, which you could do as well. All right, then again, broker protection period you're familiar with. We've already talked about that today. All right, frequently asked question again. Question, if my buyer agency agreement is for 2% and the seller offers to pay 3%, can I take all of it? And the answer is no. Your contractual agreement is maxed out at what the buyer agreed to and signed. You are stuck at that 2%. Also, make sure at no point does that say 0, unless you're truly working for free. If you have a buyer representation agreement that shows 0, you will not get paid. You are entitled to 0. Please don't make that mistake. All right, rolling on to section on dual agency. Again, if you are going to be doing dual agency with your buyer, in case they're interested in one of your listings, great, okay. Have them initial, more legalese. You can all read on your own darn time. and more legalese and more legalese. So we get down to the bottom of page 6. There's an optional section of consent to contact. It means they're signing their life away for you to text and blast and email them, and this is an optional section. But on the bottom of the last page 7, buyer signature there on the left, accepted by eXp Realty brokerage company again. And this is how I like the fact that they've changed the language from sponsoring brokerage to brokerage company to make it clear for the consumer. You can put your name in here. And then, again, this is an exclusive agreement, needs to be signed by your managing broker. Put in that spot there for DigiSign and send it over for signature. So good stuff. All right, my local board has an exclusive buyer agreement. Can I use that? Yes, sure. And we're still waiting for some of the associations in Illinois to update their forms. I'm shocked. There's some that haven't even done it, and it's, we're, like I said, a little over 2 weeks away. Please continue to make sure you're checking your emails from your associations and boards in Illinois and seeing those newsletters coming over, taking training classes. A lot of the associations have done Zoom training, in-person training classes on their new forms. Please make sure you're participating in those if you're intending on using your local association's forms. All right, let's go through some FAQs. Does the exclusive agreement require managing broker signature? Yes, in the state of Illinois, all agreements must be signed by a managing broker and delivered back to the client. What's that? All right. Hey, I appreciate you sitting in, going through this whole process, and educating yourself on how to fill these forms out. Again, things are continuing to change. If anyone has a question, you are more than welcome at this point to unmute yourself and ask away or ask questions in the chat box. You've got me here. I am the unauthority on this entire topic. Unauthority. And so if you have any questions, now's the time. You can drop in the chat or unmute yourself and ask. Question in the chat box, are we to call the listing agent prior to each showing to ask about commissions from the seller? And the answer is yes. That is the primary way that commissions are being communicated to a buyer's agent. There are other ways that people are talking about. It's not entirely very clear. There could be some vague remarks in the private remarks in the MLS that say the seller is open to buyer concessions. It remains to be seen. We've gotten some direction from our MLSs in Illinois about what can and can't be done, but again, that's kind of fluid, and I expect that to change a lot over the course of the next few months as people see what's being done and who gets penalized for doing what. So I would err on the side of caution on that. But yeah, essentially. And I know that there are listing agents who are coming up with ways to communicate what a seller is to offer. And, that's going to be various funny jokes on the internet being posted, sign writers, and who knows what. Question in the chat, do you prefer we could credit the buyer and buyer pays or seller pay us direct? Does it matter? Well, ultimately, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. We are not wanting to have to guarantee or pay a portion from brokerage to brokerage, right? We don't sign broker-to-broker commission agreements. So it's really at the title company how it's going to be broken out, similar to how it's been done before, right? The seller is just going to show it, and I'm talking to a lot of the title companies in Illinois about how they're going to display that on the settlement statement, but it's probably going to be more similar to a seller credit to the buyer on the settlement statement, and then the buyer paying the brokerage. But again, that's all going to be handled at title on the settlement statement. So no one's cutting us a check directly. No, the seller's not cutting us a check directly at the closing. It's all going to be handled on the settlement statement. Question in the chat, in your market, are many brokerages that take a minus fee? Yes, I'm very familiar with that from the buyer's agent commission. Is this fee going to disappear now? I'm sure there'll be ways that agents figure out to charge things. Again, I think it's going to be fluid, but keep in mind, co-op goes away and out of the MLS entirely. So those fees that were disclosed in the MLS before are going to be gone. So I don't know how the listing agent's going to communicate those additional fees or junk fees or whatever you want to call them on those transactions. It just depends on how they're communicating seller concessions to the buyer's agents. So it's going to be interesting. All right, how to go about updating listing agreements that currently have the old languages of August 17th. So, your listing agreements can stay in place. Right? eXp has an amendment that we're going to ask listing agents to sign. Again, we'll probably get that communication out here in the next, not right away, because we don't want to frustrate sellers or concern them if that listing goes under contract between now and August 17th. Why am I signing this? And this is going to be different. So as we get closer to the 17th, we'll be coming back to listing agent, ask them to have their seller sign an amendment. But right now, any listing that's in place, that's under contract right now, stays in place. The cooperative compensation that's been offered stays, even if it goes under contract on August 14th and doesn't close until September, right? We're still going to grandfather those in and honor them. So we're not going to have you sign amendments yet. But great question. Yeah, at a certain point we will. And that amendment to the listing agreement is already in SkySlope forms. If you're curious to read through that, but we'll have a communication coming out probably closer to the 17th. Like I said, we don't want to stress your sellers out and get them confused. So, but yeah, great question. Updating listings. So yeah, lots of moving parts right now. And question ramifications regarding the appraisal process. The lenders have really been heavily engaged in this. That's been a good thing. My concern, like title companies have not been engaged in this process. And I'm really frustrated by that piece. But the lending community and the mortgage companies and I've been talking to the success lending people pretty much like once a week, just trying to get an understanding of how it all works. They've got a new program coming out now where also a buyer can finance a buyer's agent's commission. And so there are all these other ancillary things that are coming out. So I think the lending community is aware of it. And I think the way the language is detailed in the contracts, that's kind of sort of not really part of the process. Again, it remains to be seen. But I think the lenders are very aware of it and going to be probably very, very flexible. All right, question in chat. When to submit a direct compensation form from the seller? Yes. So, there are various ways to handle it. I think as a buyer's agent, you can call the listing agent up prior to showing the property and say, hi, is your seller offering concessions to a buyer to pay their buyer's agent? And they say, yes, great. You can show the property then, and then you can submit that compensation addendum with the offer. You could also submit the compensation addendum prior to showing it. It's really up to you on how you want to handle it. In some cases, the listing agent may not be open to it, but and maybe they are. It's again, it's one of those things that remains to be seen. So you could send it before you show the property. You could send it with the offer. You could send it separately. But you definitely want to get that signed by the seller, agreeing to the concessions as part of the offer, right? And make sure if you're submitting that with the offer that you're referencing that in your offer as an addendum. So there are certain sections in your purchase contract that say, please look for this and this certain addendum. Make sure that you're referencing that, like see attached compensation addendum or direct to seller compensation addendum, but referencing it specifically in your offer. So yeah, it'll highly likely in this case, it'll be submitted with the offer. But yeah, fantastic question. But yeah, just lots of moving parts right now, and things will change, right? And we'll keep revising it. Who else? Anyone else? Fantastic questions. Appreciate it. Really good stuff. Awesome. I appreciate you. We will be having a new class coming out too in regards to the eXp exclusive listing agreement, right? We're not 100% ready to use it in Illinois because we're getting an Illinois specific addendum added to it, but I should have that here in the next couple of days. And when we do, we're going to roll out a similar class to this as it relates to the exclusive listing agreement, kind of the concept, why we've created it, some of the things we're doing and why. but we're totally open to sellers paying commissions to a buyer's agent or to a buyer and crediting it. It's perfectly fine. And it's perfectly fine to put it on the listing agreement. It's just we have a specific way that we want to have that specifically put out there. Right? We're staying away from broker to broker commissions. That was the crux of this whole lawsuit that we were trying to get away from. So stay tuned for that one. We're going to have that class coming out here very soon. Cool. All right. Appreciate you again for coming in. Appreciate the time you've invested in your business to learn more about this. If you know anyone that is looking to get more details on this, we're going to repeat this session again. Anybody in your office or local office, in your team, local market, you feel this is important, we'll repeat this again on Tuesday. We're going to repeat this again on Thursday, and then we'll put more on the calendar after the 17th. And then we're also going to, like I said, put together the class on listing agreements and the language going forward on that. But again, feel free to always come into World, ask questions, send us email, call us, chat us, whatnot. Your managing broker team is available all the time to answer questions for you and keep you in the loop. So I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for coming in, and hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. See you. Bye.